and I'll be chairing the finals. Uh, my pref my preferred gender pronouns are she and her, and I'll also like to ask my fellow panelists to introduce themselves. But before, just mention the preferred way of taking your POIs and also your preferred gender pronouns with before starting your speeches. Akansha, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Akanksha. Hello, I hope I'm audible. Yeah. Hi, I'm Akanksha. My pronouns are she and her, and all the best to both the teams.
Hi, my name is Arin Christopher. All the best to both the teams.
Hello, this is Divine. Congratulations on making this fun. Looking forward to a great debate.
Hey, Nitiksha, prefer gender pronouns she and her. All the very best for the debate.
Rohit here. Congratulations to both teams and all the best for the final.
Hello everyone, this is Yoti, name preferred pronouns, all the best.
Great. I think we are done with the adjudicators' introductions. Now we can move on to government side, a brief round of introductions from them. Thanks a lot, guys.
On PM, we have Shruti, DPM is Abhishek, reply is also Shruti, and GovWeb is Nitin. POI is in the chat for everyone.
Thank you, opposition.
This is Subhan. I'll be going as the yellow, no preference independence, POS in the chat.
Hello, I'm Avignya and I'll be going as DLO.
Hi, I'm Day. I'm going as Upwip. POs through the chat, please.
Great. With that, just confirming from OC who is going to share the timer.
Hi, yeah, I'll be sharing my timer.
Great, Manya would be doing that. With that, once the timer is being shared, we can start with the PM whenever you're ready.
Hi, confirming that I'm audible. Hello.
Loud and clear, Shruti. Yes, you are audible.
So sorry about that. 1 second. I'll also just rename myself. All right. Can I please request the timer be switched to a stopwatch instead? All right, while that's happening, hi everyone, my name is Shruti. Please just address me by my speaker role, otherwise she or they. POI is in the chat. However, if I haven't taken one by 5:30, unmute yourself, interrupt me, ensure that I take a POI. Given that it's a PM speech, I will try to take 2 POIs. So just put them in the chat. I have the chat box open and will be keeping my eye on it. Starting speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we think a regular 20-year-old has dreams, desires, and aspirations that they want to fulfill. These are usually a product of a couple of things. One, the way that they are raised, the way that society tells you that these are X number of things you're supposed to do in life, that you should be doing in life, and also the way that pop culture goes ahead and constantly reinforces it for us, right? In the way that we're made to believe that there exists a bucket list for the things that we're meant to achieve in our life. We think a 20-year-old with terminal illness is innately incapable of going ahead and meeting these aspirations, particularly within only 6 months, which is why we're incredibly proud to propose. Why do we think this is true? We think firstly, this individual, given that they're suffering from a terminal illness that only leaves them with 6 months to live, is potentially somebody who is physically incredibly weak, probably feels really depressed and hates their life because they constantly keep questioning, why just me when everybody else that's my age is picking their college majors, falling in love, and achieving all the dreams that they had always wanted to. Note that like terminal illness isn't just about a regular illness where you're sick for 6 months and then you die, right? It's also something significantly more severe in that your vision begins to fail, you start losing your hearing, your limbs become significantly weaker, you can't breathe for long periods of time without necessarily relying on some form of external support. And the only way out of feeling this miserable is usually taking drugs which are as strong as morphine or things such as opioids, right? We think even if you were to go ahead and take such drugs, you feel really spaced out, not really within your head, and aren't really yourself, even if there is medical aid that is able to somehow save or give you some relief from the physical pain that you're feeling, right? At this point, we think the wish fulfillment that opposition is inevitably going to argue, in that you have 6 months, make the best of it, live your best life, go travel the world, is incredibly unlikely. And we also think realistically, wish fulfillment is beyond just traveling the world, as opposed to what Hindi movies tell you, in that they probably look like things like you want to fall in love, you want to be able to care for your parents, give back to the people that truly raised you and made an impact to your life, want to get married, maybe want to have kids. And 6 months effectively goes ahead and prevents you from doing that. So please keep this in mind when opposition comes up and talks to you about wish fulfillment. Second piece of clarification, even though this is fairly implicit, is that this is probably going to be a scientifically vetted process, in that your body is going to be frozen cryogenically within a lab, while there is active research happening to ensure that your revival can happen, because that's the condition on which you agreed to cryogenically freeze yourself in the first place. 4 arguments we present to you then. Firstly, and this is because we wanted to have fun, we want to tackle the absolute worst case that opposition can pitch to us first. The worst thing that can happen to you onside government is that you do go ahead and cryogenically freeze yourself, but there is no cure that is found, and you're not eventually revived from that particular chamber. We would posit that that is still better than living out painful six months of your life where you hate yourself and the life in the way that it exists right now, because of 2 reasons. Firstly, we think you're able to die peacefully, but secondly, you're also able to die hopefully. What do we mean by this? We think hope is one of the most fundamental traits that guide our lives and the choices that we make every single day. You hope to get the girl, which is why you chase her. You hope to achieve your IIT dreams, which is why you give up the best years of your school life to go ahead and sit and study for fucking STEM subjects. You aspire to break or win at tournaments, which is why weekend after weekend we show up at this thankless activity, right? Hope is fundamentally what drives us as people, and which is why we think if you go into a cryogenic chamber, you end up having a hopeful death, i.e., this is not the end, life holds better things for me, which is why you die a significantly happier person. We think this also means you're more likely, therefore, to die peacefully, because you know that there might be light at the end of the tunnel, as opposed to when you die 6 months later after you've basically thrown a temper tantrum at everybody around you for things out of their own control and not been able to do anything that you truly ever aspired to do. Your near and dear ones are therefore happier, because they too are hopeful that someday they might be able to revive you, even if it's after their passing. You still get to go ahead and live a better life, because panel, it's important to think about this from the perspective of relatives as well. I think for a parent that sees a child this young die, their primary thought is they never got to live the life that we always wanted to give it to them, which is why we think even your relatives are likely to be happier on our side of the house, because sure, it might suck that they're having to lose you maybe 5 months earlier than they definitely would have, but at least they're giving you a better shot at life. Second argument, why the cure is therefore then likely, and this is the more realistic case on our side of the house. We think if cryogenic technology does in fact exist, then capitalism is only likely to go ahead and push it further, right? In that, innovation is only going to increase within this sphere as competition rises. Please note that when you cryogenically freeze yourself, you're effectively giving yourself an infinite amount of time in life. We think resources and compute power are only therefore likely to increase. Today, one iPhone holds as much compute power as the first computer that was ever invented goes ahead and holds, right? We also think that human resources, with the fact that social mobility is happening across the world, in that more individuals are opting into courses which require an educational background, more individuals are signing up for college degrees and university degrees, you're more likely to have human resources to go ahead and aid your recovery at that point as well. Third argument, why this is in and of itself better for you. We think you actually get to live out your life in the best case, right? Or in the more realistic case, as we posited. I.e., you get back a living, breathing, functional body with which you can essentially fulfill all of the aspirations that you wanted to while you were alive up till the age of 20. We think it's quite possible that your friends are probably alive, say in the next 50 years when you are in fact revived. Maybe some are older, maybe some others have cryogenically frozen themselves, but you can still go ahead and have some support system. But even if you don't have that, we think just the fact that you're getting a new lease on life, a chance to go ahead and essentially live out an entirely new life, is still something that's special, given that you're uniquely an individual that has lived in 2 entire eras at that point of time. We think that has incredible social value and people want to befriend you. You're an individual that can probably go ahead and also make money off of this experience, but we think that's a tertiary benefit that accrues, the primary just being the fact that you get to live a life again. Our final argument, why is the world likely to be better off in the longer run? We think that, okay, is the world that we live in right now shitty? Absolutely. However, is it significantly better than what it was 100 years ago? Also, absolutely. Yes, racism is real. Yes, patriarchy is real. But all of these problems over a period of time have only decreased in their intensity and veracity. And this is because of a couple of reasons that we think are likely to continue. One, progressive change that is a result of the advent of internet as well as education into communities which previously did not have access to this. We think this essentially leads to individuals opening up their ideas to more thoughts, pushing for a society that is more better and more humanitarian on several grounds, which is what you see reflected in legislative change across the world in the status quo. Secondly, we think technology is only likely to improve, and the life that we have always only dreamt of, in that a world with flying cars or a world where you can actually figure out, in which technology can actually figure out all your whims and fancies and choices before you even actually think about it. All of these are things that we have only aspired of, read about in sci-fi fiction, but taking this opportunity gives you the chance to actually live a life like that, actually experience what that world could potentially be, and that's why we're incredibly proud to propose. Also, guys, I'd said POIs in the chat. There were none. Sorry.
Thank you for that speech. Hello, whenever you're ready. Here.
Okay, just 15 seconds. All right. Starting in 3, 2, 1, start. Panelists, I'm going to structure this speech. First, I'm going to characterize to as to what's the implication of taking this. I'm going to do a few points, and then I'm going to move to my own science constructors. First, man, understand what does this mean? What does it mean when you decide that you're going to freeze yourself? What it means is that you're going to operate a knowledge that hasn't been developed. You're hoping in the future you're going to, it's going to develop and all those things. There are a few things over here. First, the tech or whatever you're hoping for is not being developed yet. Second, there's no timeline on when the tech is developed. Third, even if it's developed in it's not going to be recently done. So because medical procedures take a lot of time, you have to go through multiple steps in when you talk about medical development, such as R&D, certification, testing, people actually buying into believing that process is something that's stressful and all that stuff. Apart from this, another thing you need to notice here is when you go and freeze yourself and when you revive, you will have to reintegrate into yourself into society, which means you'll have to adjust to what the social environment is. You'll have to find a new job or whatever livelihood to sustain yourself, and you'll also have to find a new friend circle, because it's more often than likely that your entire friend circle is either going to be dead or very old for you to hang out with. Apart from this, understand there's also a very high chance that you will never be revived. You'll simply be die, and you'll simply not even die. You'll simply just be absent from the society. Nobody will realize that you're dead or whatever, because that's the sort of way it's going to happen with you. Understand, apart from this, there's also, you never know what the future is going to be like, what the world is going to be like, because, and that is why today is going to be very much skewed. It's going to be very much uninformed. You don't have any idea about what's going to happen in the near future, right? Apart from this, there's a few rebuttals, and in which I'll also be adding more context, right? First, panel, the government has made an assumption that all the people who are terminally ill are people who are very hopeless and depressed. This is not true for multiple reasons. This is not true for this one reason. First, that understand that people who know that they're terminally ill basically sort of resign themselves to own life, and they sort of try to understand what's the importance of the human connections, value of life they have, because they realize the importance of it in the given time frame they have. They realize that they have to make sure everything just. So the fact that they're hopeless and depressed is very less likely, and they're most likely to go and enjoy life and try to make as much as possible, because that's the only thing they have, and the value of life is something they have understood with that. Apart from this, understand the government also says that we have to wish fulfillment topic that we have to say. Understand, well, wish fulfillment is still not something that's going to happen on their side, which we'll tell you later on. And since the government did not give you enough mechanism for how wish fulfillment happen on this side, we'll tell you why it's obviously not going to happen on this side. Apart from this, they also talk to you about the technology being developed and all this stuff. Understand, in that case, it's going to be even much worse off for you when you wake up in the future, because then the AI will be so developed that nobody will need to hire you, because they obviously don't know what's happening in that world in terms of tech or society or whatever, right? Apart from this, another rebuttal to the point where they had about the support system that exists. Understand, panel, see, you won't have the social background or whatever, or just because you live in two different areas, because first, people can't relate to your experience. They have no idea what you're talking about or what you're saying, simply because there's a very huge different gap that exists between those two generations. Apart from the fact that people might also think that you're a weirdo and like you're some person they can't really trust because they don't know what you are. Apart from the fact that your behavior, your mannerism, your etiquettes are also going to be very different compared to what is that, right? Because the society itself changes, it changes, moral changes, everything in that aspect is very time dynamic. The last rebuttal I have is where the world is will be, the world may not be better off and all that stuff. The world will become better. I'll tell you why that's not going to happen. Such reasons for that. First, it's likely that the world can become more intolerant. This is clearly visible to like we see the populist leaders rising up and all that stuff that's happening. Second, war can also happen, obviously visible. Very like recently, people are thinking, oh, United Nations, this war shouldn't happen. Then Ukraine happened, Afghanistan happened. What's happened? And what's still going to happen? It's possible you might wake up in a war zone. Apart from this, understand like the internet also exists, and internet is obviously promoting more and more hatred between different communities, and we have finding ourselves very utterly clueless how to regulate. That's something that's very realistic scenario on that. Apart from that, even if none of these are true, something that's obviously going to happen is climate change, which means at the point you wake up, you're likely going to have to put a fucking oxygen mask to your face every time because it simply can't breathe in the air, and the air has been that much toxic. That's something that is a very, very, very real scenario, and that's something that the other side has to deal with about like carrying an oxygen cylinder all through your back, which for the rest of the life when you wake up, right? Based on this, what are our own side's constructives, right? Basically, two things I'm going to do in this first speech. First, I'm going to tell you why the person will have a bad quality of life even if they wake up. And second, I'm going to tell you why they're never going to give their family the closure that the family should have gotten. First argument, right? Understand the person will have a very bad quality of life. This will be on two fronts. I'm going to tackle this. First, on the social front. Understand that on the social front, the person will not have a good social life as such because now the person never had a friend. Yeah, Nitin, I'll take it later. The person never had friends, will never have the friends that they initially did, and they'll have to go on and make new friends because more often than not possible that the friend circle they had basically is dead, or they have like moved on their lives and have separated, or they're very old. Anything of that sort, it's very difficult for them to connect. If you're like friends are now suddenly 60 years and you're 20, you obviously can't have that much social bonding. Then you need to find different friends and all that stuff, right? Which means now what situation is going to be is you find yourself in a completely different environment, which is like 50 years or 100 years after the last time you saw it. And then at that point, you aren't used to anything that's going to happen. You're introduced to social etiquette, mannerism, or anything of that sort. And you have to open yourself and make yourself vulnerable to the world so that you can actually go on and make more friendships and more relationships. That's something that's very difficult for you to do because this is an environment where you have no option. And this means that you're going to suffer a lot because making friends will be extremely difficult for you. And even if you won't, more likely than not, will not be successful in doing so because people simply won't be very much open to you and all that stuff. Apart from this, the second thing is that your old circle and your whatever the feedback mechanism, safety mechanism you might have, saying that okay, when you move to a different city, you can still call back your parents. But in this case, you obviously can't do that because those people will also not be there at that point, which means that you'll basically be left alone. You won't have any sort of this, and you'll you are the point.
Every relationship, friend, community is built from the ground up anyway. So on either side, you've probably done that and you can do it again. Why is that so hard?
Got it. Yeah. This is the next point. Understand when at the point where you have to make friends or whatever, you have some point of introduction to yourself. As in saying that if I want to make friends in a group of say debating society, I'll find one person who's in debating society no previous, and they're going to introduce me to everyone. This won't all happen in the other side because obviously no one over here, right? Based on that, right? Understand when there's also this pain of separation that's going to exist on that side because you obviously have to deal with losing your loved ones the moment you wake up, and all that's something that's very difficult for you to do. So also on the career front, you're going to be far worse off because you'll still have to earn money to support yourself because you want to live a dignified life that you obviously can do because developing skills is something that's going to be very difficult for you. Because understand, compare a 20-year-old 100 years back to a 20-year-old now who can like code and do whatever all that fancy stuff, which obviously the other person can't, which means that you're going to be very much worse off. You can't find any job and you're likely going to suffer, like live on government allowance. That is the best case the government actually gives you anything. That means you won't have the dignified quality of life in the best case of scenario, and that is something that's we don't believe is something you can do. Apart from that, getting a job is also be very difficult. It's possible that AI might already like take over different stuff and you won't have jobs. Apart from this, understand closure. This is the next argument that your family will never get closure. I think that's going to expand on it because simply you as a person you want to care about your family because you are emotionally bonded to them. At the point where you say that okay, I'm going to be off, I don't know when I'm going to come back, your family will have to deal with that fear. Like, is that person coming back? Every birthday they're going to have to wait. Oh, should I like make an extra piece of cake for that person? Should I reserve that person come alright? And you have no idea. That's something a situation in which you're going to leave your family, which again is a not good thing to do. So, and based on those reasons, proud to oppose.
Thank you for that fine speech. TPM, whenever you're ready. Here.
Hey, can I check if I'm audible?
Loud and clear.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be starting my speech in around 30 seconds.
All right, once again, check if I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Sure, wonderful. Starting my speech then in 3, 2, 1. I'm actually a bit stressed out. Opposition made so many assertions in 7 minutes that I'm not sure if I can respond to all of them in time. But let's clump them into groups first. In terms of, let's say, the arguments on what the future looks like. First thing, climate change, increase in intolerance, and AI revolution are all textbook assertions and are entirely speculative. Please provide mechanism down the bench in terms of proving any likelihood for it to be credited on any other sheet. Second thing, I do think they have some amount of, let's say, impactable case when they're talking about difference in culture, etiquette, etc. A very simple intuition pump. And it's very similar to moving to another country. You probably have no social circle or very limited social circles. Secondly, you probably are not aware of the culture. You probably have different interests, etc. I think many people are able to successfully do so. I'm not very certain whether this will apply for the same. But a bit more framing over here. Look, it's randomly thrown out into the wild at the point of time you go to the future. You're probably a part of a regimentalized, organized governmental program, which means after you have been gradually unfrozen and your disease has been treated, you go through a program that allows you to rehabilitate into society, probably brings you up to speed with the basic technologies, and provides you some way and some program in terms of integrating again, which then means no, the amount of unawareness that they're claiming probably doesn't occur on their side. But a few more things, right? At that point of time, do understand two things would occur. A, you're probably very curious to the world you are in, which means that your natural inquisitiveness probably leads you to interact with other people. But other people are also inquisitive about you. You have so many interesting things that they don't know about. You're an inherently interesting person. I see people making friends for you by virtue of that. You're someone who's come from a different era, right? I'm not very sure why people have a natural tendency to rebuff you as compared to just try to know more about you. But I think people on a tendency, at least, have a tendency to be nice to strangers as compared to being rude. I think then let's move on a bit. And one main observation over here, opposition entirely dropped their case in terms of saying why these 6 months can be good, which shows the lack of confidence that they have in their own positive case. A few more pieces of development there. Into the investigation of psyche of this particular individual. Note over here, a terminal illness is not just you having a certain date wherein your life goes turned off. It means a lifetime of suffering, a lifetime of debilitating physical and mental weaknesses. Why is particularly so? Understand that A, you probably have limited mobility and been confined to a particular room or a particular premise so that you can be kept under strict monitoring. B, you're probably taking medication and undergoing bed rest for prolonged periods of time. C, the amount of interactions you can have with other people are probably limited since you're already undergoing A and B. I think specifically then your ability to form friends were inherently limited in the first place within the scope of this 20 years, but you probably want to make friends, especially given the characterization that Shruti told you in terms of both pop culture, parental expectations, social expectations. Giving you a chance to do so. Secondly, then, also understand, and let's just think about it a bit. Even if in our worst case, you don't have any social support structures, at very least, the least thing that we're offering to you is hope. We're allowing you the opportunity to walk on your own two legs, to breathe air freely, to actually explore different places, to actually for once do what you like without necessarily having to go back to medication and going back to bed rest in one silent, white little room where observed by doctors who are kind of unfamiliar to you. I still think even if, let's say, you're not instantly the most popular person, and even if you don't have many friends, just have 1 or 2 people, that's probably a life you'd prefer. Second thing then, in terms of why the cure is life, and I think the framing is over here is very simple. Do understand technology is improving exponentially. This doesn't necessarily mean that there's a particular cure being found for it. Even that's not occurring in the next 50 to 100 years. Do understand our gene editing technology is improving, our nanotechnology is improving. As I said, AI, etc. are improving. Which then means that there is a great possibility by improvement in other fields that allows them to find an alternate solution to your problem. If they're not necessarily able to, let's say, solve your own disease, they're probably able to minimize the symptoms to an extent that you can actually reintegrate into society. I think then it's kind of absurd for them to say that there's no possibility of, let's say, this technology, etc., or let's say any changes occur. Last piece of framing then. Last piece of weighing then. Do note over here that they necessarily had to tell me why exactly you have to choose these 6 months over the cryogenic freezing. They so far have provided 0 reasons as why you choose these 6 months. Over here, one very important perspective to consider, especially since actor debate, is the perspective of actor itself. Note over here, it's not a 12-year-old, it's not like a kid. It's someone who has undergone teenage. One very specific difference that happens because of this is that your priorities and what makes you happy changes. It's no longer happy for you if you're given a teddy bear or taken to Disney World, and even this materialistic pleasure no longer things that necessarily make you happy entirely. What you now probably crave for, and especially everyone goes through this during their teenage years, is probably craving for more acknowledgement, claiming for more respect and affection. Inherently, when you see everyone treating you with eyes of sympathy, with pity, and just trying to make you feel good without actually treating you as a person, but just as someone who they, let's say, who they pity or whom they're just trying to do their best for, is something fake that these people can identify. Is something that necessarily doesn't allow them fulfillment, because they don't see the other person treating them with as an other person equally, but someone with pity as an object who is not necessarily able to control his own destiny. I don't think, regardless of how happy you make those 6 months in terms of doing all the events he likes, will necessarily give a satisfying conclusion to this person, because they have not necessarily been treated in a humanized way throughout this process. Also note over here our characterization in terms of how you're falling, how you're rapidly deteriorating health also disables the same. Before I move on a POI. Seeing none. Next piece of frame. Next thing.
I have a POI.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the delay. Do you think people won't pity you in the future when they know that all your friends and family are dead and you needed a second start in life? Do you think pity won't happen then?
I think, do note over here, I don't think you're actively wearing a t-shirt saying, hey, I have come from the past. You probably only mentioned that to a few close people of yours. You generally are able to interact with society in a normal way and carry about normal conversations. But B, I think you probably start your life afresh, which means after a few years, you probably go past that. For example, people suffer trauma. People also suffer trauma and sudden deaths in their lives. Their lives are not necessarily defined, but it's in they're able to move past, since their life moves on. The point of time you have a terminal illness and you're dying from the same, and it completely connected to etc., you can't necessarily move on. One final thing, if let's say the plank opposition wants to base on his families, note over here, on their side, all the parents see and all your friends see is a grave whom they could necessarily not leave, who couldn't live a happy life. On our side, even if you're frozen, we see a possibility of you once living a happy life and fulfilling your dreams. I think this comparison is enough. An unfulfilled grave versus a frozen, or let's say a freeze with hope. I think over here, then it's pretty clear wherein these parents, etc., would be happy. The comparison debate is very simple. Firstly, hopefully opposition makes a positive case. Secondarily, clearly the future, any potential future, even a non-existent one, would be better than living the present for them. Very, very proud.
Thank you for that fine speech. DLO, whenever you're ready.
Yep, starting in a few seconds. All right. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, I think Gov suffers from the same issues that they want to put the burden on us, right? I think the entire case from side government is that it doesn't matter despite the structural reasons that we gave you why the future is likely going to be worse by things like trends that we're seeing from in current society, even things like climate change that are very, very apparent. But also I think the broad case from side government is just that you have dreams and those are better in the long run. I think my speech largely may sound pretentious, but I'm going to try to principally deal with all the premises and say why they're wrong, and hopefully that should win us this debate. Firstly, then the social cultural environment of dreams, right? Understand dreams and your goals and so on and so forth are predicated on social cultural norms and circumstances. Why? Because they're only valuable within circumstances that you know of, right? Why? Firstly, because they're decided by them, things like love and so on and so forth that are decided by things like movies and people around you. Second, right? Things like passions and preferences and so on and so forth are decided by things that are around you. It's based on immediate based on immediate surroundings and so on and so forth. Therefore, when the world changes, these dreams and values don't hold the same weight, right? And why is that the case? Understand the point at which you have some dream of a relationship. Understand the concept of relationships themselves change over time, right? Over the last 30 years or so, because of the internet and so on and so forth, what a relationship looks like has changed drastically, whereas things like AIDS has still continued to be a terminal illness, right? Understand the fact that social fabrics change much faster than technological change because of all the broad reasons that Sugandh gave you already. What does that then mean? Like, what does that then mean in this debate, right? Firstly, it's because you have a lack of epistemic access of what the social fabric in the future will look like. Therefore, you're likely not going to have the same goals, same dreams, and not going to value them the same way. But secondly, intuition pump, right? Like, and I think this intuition pump directly clashes with their intuition pump of, oh, you're just going to a different country. No, you're not going to a different country, right? What this really looks like is, oh, like if you had the opportunity to leave everything behind and go live on Mars with aliens, that is a more like likely case, right? And that is, I think most people would not choose to do that because they like you leave everything that you know of behind to go to a different place where you might not be happy. I think that's a far more clear intuition pump that that like explains the debate, and I think that also explains why the same like dreams and goals aren't the same when you go into the future. What is the impact on this debate? We think friendships, right? At the point of which like the social fabric, things like morality is also something that's predicated on time. When these things change, we think friendships become much harder, right? Like friendships aren't built ground up. At the point at which I go to some and talk to someone in the United States, we still have similar ideals because we have similar like perceptions of pop culture. We have similar ideas. We have similar like concepts of morality. At the point at which that changes, we think friendships become much harder. Understand also, like people aren't monolithic, right? Like maybe everyone is not the same, doesn't have the same propensity to make friends, which is why some people are less likely to be much worse off. Thirdly, you're just going to have worse jobs, something that I've already told you, like something Sugandh's already told you about. Secondly, then, where is your family worse off? This is a ridiculous statement, like this is sort of a ridiculous argument that comes from Gov, right? They say, oh, like your family's going to be happy because, oh, there's some possibility and there's some hope as well is within circumstances. At the point of use their case, the rebuttal to us talking about, how in the future you're likely not going to be able to like fit in, you're likely not going to have friends, you're likely not going to have jobs. That, oh, at the point at which like we go in the future, we're going to train them and give them exposure, right? They can't get away with this because understand visceral experience is very different from physical facts, and a very simple intuition pump for this is Mary's paradox. That is, if I'm a person who has never seen color before but still have all the knowledge about like color in the world through and like have a PhD about color, at the point at which I see color, that is something still new that I'm going to learn. That is even if you have every single physical fact about a phenomenon, unless you experience it viscerally, you're not going to be able to understand it. Thirdly, then you don't like oh, these people, like this 20-year-old will not like sympathy but wants respect. They never tell us why like that respect will exist in the future when we already told you like unlikely to get employed. Right? But secondly, we already told you why this like sympathy is likely going to exist in the future, to which they give a ridiculous response that I don't want to deal with. Secondly, then I think I'm going to deal with that best case, something that they were like so like predicated upon in their like DPM speech. Right? Understand utility is not useful on its own. That is just because you get like, and this is a best case. Right? Say you go to the future, say you like somehow manage to get a job and somehow manage to get a job and so on and so forth. Right? Just because you get a higher standard of living, it doesn't mean like it doesn't matter, right? Because the human will like does not attach value to it. And an intuition pump for this is experience machine. That is just because like I can attach myself to a machine and be the happiest as possible, and like even though like I may like have like insane amount of endorphins, that doesn't matter to me. Most people would not like choose to like plug themselves into that experience machine. Why does that matter then in this debate? Firstly, what does the human will attach value to? We think it's largely things like family, love, relationships, derivatives of human connections, happiness, and then satisfaction. Why are these things likely the things that are likely going to be attached value to? First, human beings are social beings. We have historical conditioning to like make us believe this way. Things of like community value and social validation, shared memories of happiness, and happiness is only real when shared, right? That is like we see like single rich men who are billionaires but still depressed. We think validation, companionship, something at the core of human value, something and which is why unlikely to get that in the future. Impact then on this debate, you're worse off in all circumstances. That is, even if your standard of living is improved to a large degree and even somehow able to live like I don't know this, and like this is that case, right? That is, oh, like it doesn't matter if you're like sad here, at the point at which I can go to the future and just have the experience of walking with my own two legs, I'm going to be happier. We don't think that's the case. At the point at which you have no one to share that with, at the point at which like none of that matters to you, we don't think you're likely going to do that. We think you're likely going to have a terrible death as well. And long-term unhappiness. Largely, then I'm going to do weighing, right? And this is something that again, like DPM really wanted us to do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. But okay, actually, a little bit before that, another principle, right? Understand, like we don't think human beings are always monotonically preferred to more time, right? That is, I would much rather spend 5 minutes with Sugandh than 15 minutes with Diya, right? That is to say, like all time is not the same. Like quality is equally as important, or like if not more important than quantity, right? What does that then mean in this debate? Understand, like this already takes away a lot of their arguments about about a possible good life, because we've already told you there's enough reasons as to why it might not be the best, right? Because things like the lottery of where you're going to be born is there's likely going to be things like extreme climate. There's likely going to be a pandemic in the future. God knows how it's going to be. Those are things that they never deal with. Largely, then I'm going to do weighing our average case versus literally every case of theirs. On average, we think like those 6 months are going to be amazing, right? We don't think they're just going to live those like 6 months like just shitting on other people, because we think it's likely that they like go ahead and like realize like their fate, right? Which means they're likely going to cherish those 6 months. Why is this likely to happen? We think firstly, like at the point of which like we've seen like historically this happening, right? Like when you see Make-A-Wish Foundation like giving kids like their wishes, we don't see these children to be just sad and depressed. We think people like likely like resign themselves to their fate. We think these 6 months are likely going to be good for these people as well. Why? Because understand, on the average case, we think these people are the average individuals who have median income. They're likely going to be able to like do whatever they want within those 6 months. Secondly, you cherish life and friends. You like make like you have like very valuable moments that you otherwise would not get, like you otherwise would not get to experience. Thirdly, you don't die alone. You die in the comfort of your parents and family. Right? I'm saying this is principally very important. It's a happy death, right? Like it's very different from like other cases where like people where people die alone, which is much worse off. And this is closure not only for yourself and your family, and that's very important. On their side, in their worst case, your life is just over. You don't do shit. Like you're never born again. Those 6 months are gone, and you don't do anything, which we think like we will unilaterally. In the second case, average case, which is a terrible life in the long run, and you go ahead and don't have a job, in which case you're much better off on our side. Anyway, third case, even in the best case where where you have a higher standard of living, we've already told you why utility doesn't matter unless there's human will that attaches value to it, which is why we win this debate on all fronts. Very proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. Gavrit, whenever you're ready. You're here.
Yeah, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Just give me a second. Right, starting my speech. In 3, 2, 1. Opposition says they'd rather live with their family for 6 months than freeze themselves for a life full of possibilities. But the problem here is that they don't deal with the analysis that came right from PM, that you aren't spending 6 months living, you're spending 6 months dying. 2 parts in my speech. Firstly, why suicide is better than nothing, like literally not being reborn or suicide is still better than living those 6 months because of how they're tortured. And secondly, why you will be reborn and why that life is good. On why like just dying is still better. One, note that note that the 6 months you live is torture, because one, every person you speak to, every activity you do is something that reminds you of everything that you cannot do. The fact that your friends will be talking about going to college, or will be planning for more than 6 months ahead, or having discussions of what they want their life to be or how their decisions impact future, and that will always remind you of what you cannot do. Secondly, the feeling of despair when you realize your life is a ticking time bomb, which means even there will be moments when you're not with your friends and family, and all you can think about is how fast you're going to die, and that is coming, which also prevents all the kind of fun that they care about in terms of family and friends from happening. Thirdly, the feeling that you have constantly let people down. Deputy talked in length about how you're going to let your relatives down. You're going to feel like a burden on them. You do no fault of your own. Means that even if you do love them, even if you do want to spend time with them, the relationship is ruined, which means you can't have all the benefits that DLO talks about. Fourthly, when you realize that you are the source of pain and despair for those other individuals, you're unable to communicate to them that it's not their fault, like beyond using say words, or like beyond using words, or like trying your best to use like platitudes in terms of telling them that look, it's not your fault, and them trying to do the same to you, which creates this awkward weight to every communication that prevents you from like having the conversations that you would otherwise have, which means even those conversations, if they would have had value in another life, the fact that you're dying in 6 months means you don't have any value. None of this has been responded to. We're winning on that. The only response I get from opposition is saying that, oh, but you can still enjoy life. Except, look, every moment you enjoy is a reminder of what is being taken away from you. If you enjoy a roller coaster ride, you remember, oh, it's the last roller coaster ride you'll ever have. A conversation with your friend, no matter how good it is, you'll realize that this is something that you could have had more for if life was more fair to you. And this is not an example. It's a structural problem inside opposition's world, that there is this catch-22 always. The more you enjoy it, the more you realize that you have more has been taken from you, which means the solution probably then is to like make you feel bad and make you feel bad about life, because like life is good, but at that point life is bad, which means you're losing out anyway. Right. Where from principle. One, we think life has no opt-in. Specifically, this individual has a terminal disease, obviously didn't opt into the terminal disease, which means the only principally fair way to like have a just life at that point is to ensure that this person has a fair opt-out of their life. That opt-out cannot be suicide, because suicide has like a very bad connotation to it. We explained to you why this is a positive and hopeful connotation, because this person, when they come back, this person has a hope of coming back, which means this is a fair and respectable opt-out and dignified opt-out that we are giving them. Beyond the impacts, then on principle, we're winning the first clash. At this point of this debate, they were already head of side opposition. Why is that? Because even if you're not reborn, or even if you're reborn into a war-torn territory and then you're like, oh, no, thank you, and then you kill yourself at that moment, you still think at that point you still had a better life and a better death than you would have an on-site opposition. Second part of my speech, I talk about why you're likely to have a good life. On reintegration, let's cut out the examples here, because opposition at DLO spends a good time explaining why people will be too different in the future and how relationships are based on context. The problem here is they don't really explain why this person cannot adapt to those differences, right? Which is to say, my challenge at GovWeb to DLO is not saying that, oh, people won't be different, or like love and relationships aren't based on context, but presumably you can adapt to those contexts. The analysis that then remains at DLO is the intuition from that, oh, when old people have like dead friends or their friends that you feel bad and you feel unsympathetic for them because you know they will be alone in the world. I think that is categorically true, because simply because if we live a 100-year life, we develop heuristics. We develop heuristics wherein we don't want to make new friends because there is limited value. We don't want to change our beliefs because there is limited value, right? The reason a lot of us like don't like do debating and MUNing and TMI is because we started debating and we liked it. We saw no incentive to switch. In their world, everything is different, which is to say there is a structural reason for this individual to want to drop that heuristic of staying with their friends, of they will actually realize that, look, the world I live in is far different from the world I am in now, which means the stories that I aspire to or stories that are meaningful to me are not as meaningful to me now. At that point, this debate then becomes about, this clash simply becomes about whether the individual, a human being in general, not an old human being, an individual in general, has the capacity to create a new culture and to adapt to new cultures. At that point, two things are true. One, the POI asked Elo in terms of how you did this once, why can't you do it again? The fact that a baby can do it, you made your friends the first time, you got into books the first time, you got into debating the first time, you can do it again because like you simply have the mental faculty to do so. But secondly, also what my second speaker talked to you about in terms of moving to another country, we often move to other countries where people are very different from us, where sometimes they're literally times of like they're literally in a way in a future of our country, right? Like for example, if a woman is leaving a country like Pakistan or the Middle East, they're actually going into the future in a more like progressive world where people treat them differently, dress differently, and act differently. Being at that point, since people can adapt to that, it is reasonable for side government to assume that we can adapt to everything that side opposition throws at us. Two more pieces of weighing for this clash. One, life where you can do whatever you want is an a priori good. Which is to say, if DLO agrees that the only thing that gives utility is individual agency, at that point in our world, this person has more agency when they're alive. The fact that they no longer have a disease that is constraining their choices, the fact that they have a full life in which they can do whatever they want, which means they have more agency to assign value to whatever they want. They can then assign utility to a new family, a new friend if they want to, or they can assign utility to the work they want to. This beats DLO's claim, because DLO's claim is this: utility is not an a priori good. What humans assign value to is a priori good. Then they assert that this human will only assign value to family. In our world, we give them a choice to assign value to whatever they want. That can be family, that can be jobs, that can be more roller coaster rides for all we care, right? Thirdly, in terms of like the tedious debate of getting jobs in like climate change and war. But before that, I love a POI. Seeing there are none, let's talk about getting a job and internet and claiming climate change. One, I don't think that they have any structural analysis of why this is likely to be as bad as they say, right? One, climate change is already being solved. This is for like multiple reasons. Individuals, like my first speaker talked about, having more compute power means we can make better choices and decisions, and we also have more awareness of the issue. Two, corporations have an incentive themselves to like fix climate change because of lack of resources, but also because of the spotlight that is put on them and their ability to do so. Thirdly, individuals and communities that have been affected by climate change for the large amount of times are minority. These people have not been represented in positions of like STEM or positions of power. My first speaker proved to you how the world is going better and more people are entering the STEM field and will continue to enter the STEM field, which means people who directly care about climate change are affecting the STEM field and can like fix the problem that exists. That's something we're already seeing, right? In terms of getting a job, I'm going to just very quickly and tell you that, look, any job you get is better than the world you would have had simply because job is better than death. But secondly, note, right? Imagine someone from 1940s worked the most basic Uber job today. Their life would be amazing, right? Because they could never even picture what a phone does or what an app does or what a vending machine does or what a grocery store does or whatever job it is, right? Which means even if it is true that you get a bad job for 2,200 when you come back, it's still a good job from like where you stand today. What we prove to you, it's unengaged. So I'll just quickly summarize, no need to wait. Like there is nothing to wait against, right? One, we prove to you that your life is likely to get much better. You're going to have access to things that you never dreamed of in terms of compute power. It could be the metaverse, it could be experiences, it could be more resources, it could be a better life and with more welfare. Two, you actually do have a life. You can make new friends, you can talk about things of new culture that doesn't exist right now, so on and so forth. It means that you have a full, happy, fulfilling life, as opposed to just dying for 6 months and waiting for that one day to come. Proud to win this debate.
Thank you for that fine speech. Opposition whip whenever you're ready.
Yep, give me 10 to 15 seconds, please. All right, starting my speech in three, two, one. Government loses its debate on two fronts. First, they don't explain or ever understand how people value things or how people derive value from certain things in life more than others. And secondly, even if they know somehow or they talk about they know the things that people value, they still can't prove that people get those things in the first place, right? I'm going to talk to you about the first place. Understand, firstly, they have made this insane assertion that all terminally ill people hate their lives. Understand that Abhigya and Sugandha have already talked to you at length about how people don't simply value like derive utility from life based on the length of that life, right? Which is to say, it's insane for them to say that all 6 months of your life are going to be terrible. There is nothing good that you get out of it, and you're just going to hate your life through it. Understand, this is firstly empirically not true. There are millions and millions of terminally ill people who still live like good lives, who are still happy about it because of many reasons, right? Firstly, they do get external aid in the way they can make their lives better. B, they do have family and friends they can share it with. Three, it's likely that they've accepted their fate as like that being the life that they have to live from now on, and people are in general adaptive, but not to the insane extent that government keeps claiming. And fourthly, because we do tell you that they're likely still going to enjoy like parts certain like times in their life. Fifth, other avenues such as Make-A-Wish Foundation, yada yada, right? So this insane assertion that they make that all terminally people hate their lives and suicide is still a better option is like crazy, right? They've pointlessly taken on this like burden which we don't understand, right? Understand, if terminally ill, understand the point at which like understand the point at which like government goes on and claims that ill people would still prefer suicide over like anything else. Like we don't understand why this debate is happening in the first place, right? But on to like more arguments, right? Understand, like government whip also comes up and talks about these new things such as opting out, etc., which is which is like entirely new matter analysis. So I'm not going to even refer to it. But more importantly, right? Understand that humans crave connection. And this is a point that like, they never talk about it. They talk about how like humans care about like, oh, getting a career, getting respect, yada yada. But at the very core, humans crave connection. This is why even after people move countries, even after people move elsewhere, they call their families, right? No matter how much money it takes, people go back and visit home once in a while because that is what they care about. Understand, they can't talk about, oh, people moving to new countries, they're able to adapt. Why can't these people, right? There are four reasons why these people can't make new communities whatsoever. Firstly, understand how alien this world will become for them, right? They might not understand the language, they might not understand the culture, they might not even understand what people are talking about around them. Sure, like they can come up and say, oh, this is a government program, they'll teach you rehabilitation, but that's like the government in Canada, like back in like I don't know the 1800s something, bring like the original native people of Canada into white society and making them integrate, right? Understand, those people still did not fit in, right? Despite how much like the government tried to integrate them, simply because they belong there, they did not grow up in that culture, they did not understand those things. Secondly, people don't want to befriend people who they think are different and weird, right? That is literally how like the world is structured, why we have so many wars, so on and so forth. Thirdly, they have no starting point anymore, right? They don't have anyone to guide them into community. For you to enter any community, you need to have like a common point on the basis of which you enter that community. Understand, these people don't have that anymore. But also fourth, right? Literally the change in morality, right? Understand, and Abhi has already spoken to you about this. This person is similar to like a person going to Mars and living with the aliens there, right? What do you even teach this sort of person? He's literally grown up in like an entirely different world with different moralities, with different like social ideals, so on and so forth. We don't understand how this person can integrate at all, right? And but like fifth, right? Understand, things like the pain of separation are really real things, right? Grief and like being away from your loved ones have literally paralyzed people to the point that they've not been able to carry on with their lives normally. We never get any answer from them as to how they think that this problem doesn't occur later on. But and lastly, right, we tell you how no fallback mechanism exists anymore, right? The point in which this person can't make friends, the point in which this person is like sad and despondent, they have no one to turn to and talk to about their problems. We tell you that their lives are going to be miserable. But secondly, right, and this is on this claim that they make about like wish fulfillment and how these people can go on and like get like a college major, yada yada. We tell you why these things are not true. First, we have told you about how society would have changed to the extent that those things might not even be relevant anymore, right? We tell you that this person likely has no skills, no competitive educations, and it has no connections which might either give them employment or support them, which means that they don't get to lead a dignified life in any sense of the term, right? There's no way that this person can truly develop these skills anymore, which means any of these claims that these people, the like government make about like wish fulfillment, so on and so forth, would still not happen, given that the world that they live in is likely going to get more capitalist, is likely going to get more dependent on technology, is likely going to demand like vastly different skills than it would have from like a 20-year-old, like 100 years ago. So we don't understand like how this person is even going to like lead like the kind of dignified life that these people talk about. Like when they talk about things like wanting respect and people pitying you, understand how much worse that pity gets in a world where you're viewed as a lineal in society. They say, oh, only a few people are likely to know about your problem, but understand how this person sticks out like a sore thumb, right? This person literally came from the past. There is no way this person can reintegrate to the extent that people don't view them as different. This person literally can't reintegrate to the person they can live a dignified life. So any claim that they made about wish fulfillment does not happen. So on the comparative, right, we tell you even in their best case, right, where they say that, oh, this person is going to, and like even not, and I'm going to move on, right? I'm going to talk about like how firstly it's likely that like this world that they're going to live in is not going to be perfect, right? The way that the prime minister, the deputy prime minister might want to paint for you. It's likely that this is a world that is suffering through climate change. It's likely a world that is like has different kinds of problems. Say like society is intolerant of like different sorts of people. They can't pick and choose examples of like, oh, like minorities in STEM and talk about solving all these problems and like say this is going to happen, right? Understand like this person literally does not know what this world is going to look like. And they'd be taking a huge gamble if they go ahead and like get frozen just with the hope, okay, like, oh, the world is going to be wonderful when I wake up. I'll take that POI now.
Beyond logical constraints, the reason people wouldn't go to Mars is because they have a fulfilling and long life here. Unless you can prove that 6 months of dying is better than, say, a complicated and difficult life, you're still losing the debate.
Got it. Understand how government essentially ignored what I spoke about for the first 2 minutes of my speech, right? I told them how people still lead fulfilling lives to the extent that they get to spend time with their family, that they get some like real moments of joy and happiness, that they get like external ways through which they can gain fulfillment. This whole claim that government makes about like terminally ill people living terrible lives, not wanting to live anymore. It's like, firstly, like I don't understand how they can even make this claim. The point at which you can literally see people still fighting to live, right? Even if they know about things like, oh, like even if they know that that's going to cause them more pain in at this moment, because they know that like there is some real value to be had in like spending some more time with your family, so on and so forth. We don't understand like how they can even come up and make these claims. But on family, right, we tell you that you as a person probably still care about your family. When they talk about like being a burden on your family, yada yada, understand you are still being a burden on you are a burden on your family, right? And like a difference of 6 months isn't that much when you compare it to like a lifetime of your family being given the false hope. Now he's going to wake up, now he's going to wake up, now he's going to wake up, but like that person never waking up at all. You don't give your family the opportunity to like move on. You don't give them the opportunity to properly grieve. And this is something that we do think this person is going to value, the point which they care about family, right? Understand, even on their best case, where this person goes to this lovely world where they get a job, all of these things, understand they still don't get like they still don't have anyone to share that happiness with, right? They still don't get to like live the life they want, to the point at which they don't have anyone to share it with. We don't understand. So understand, like even if the best case, and we're going to tell you how, like I've already told you how that's an extremely unlikely case, this person is still going to be extremely unhappy. We tell you that people don't derive value from life, from like the length of life. For all these reasons, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Opposition reply whenever you're ready.
I'm just 5-10 seconds.
Cool.
Okay. We'll be starting in 3, 2, 1, start. There are 5 things I'm going to do in this speech. First, I'm going to talk to you about the morality and society, and like that thing that we discussed. Right? Understand at depth, we have talked about how morality in the society itself changes over time, as how the two factors in like morality are very different, and this is why it's very difficult for you to go on and like actually integrate the society, because it's fundamentally very different from them. Right? A simple example from this is obviously like US and India are different countries, have different sets of morals, but US's own morals 100 years back were much more different than what they are in the present scenario from India. So it's obviously when the government comes up and says that shifting to a different country is almost the same analogy, we clearly believe it's not, because you give multiple reasons why not. First, obviously the morals in the present are likely closer than the past, apart from the fact that all the fallback mechanisms and different things. We do believe that the entire analysis of like shifting to a different country is false, and that's why it's not something on which you can base your entire prediction. It's likely you would have to defend something about Mars as well, which did not do so. Apart from this, like the next thing I want to talk about is adaptability. On which side will the adaptability be higher? Right? Understand, on our side of the house, we did like on this side of the house, it's like a person has to adapt to a different environment, different whatever you call it, the social environments and all that stuff, and have no friends, no common links, nothing to that world. Right? It's when they come up and see the children do that also. Understand, children have the parents who introduce them to different schools and who are always there with them. That does not happen with in this scenario, because you're literally alone person over here. You can have supporters or whatever, you have no idea what to do in that aspect, because you're literally alone in that world. There's nothing for you to fall back on. right? At that point, we believe that adaptability becomes very difficult, because even in case like your different countries still have like fallback mechanism called your parents at home or whatever, and you can like at least feel some sort of closeness or some sort of human connection, which is completely absent on their side of the house, because you have no idea what you're opting all that stuff, which is again now which comes to the third point, as in about the happiness, and understand panel utility itself by its own metal. There's nothing to measure it and all that stuff. And a beginner talks in depth about how utility and how it works and how what is something that humans value. And so apart from this, humans, you don't have an idea about what's going to happen in that world when you like go on and all that stuff. You have no idea about what the world could be. Could the world be good or bad? You don't have this epistemic access to know this. Apart from the fact you don't have access to like understand what is something that people value, right? You don't know how happiness is going to be worse off, because first you have to deal with the pain of separation, because when you wake up, you literally find that everyone you ever knew in your life is gone and you have no idea who to talk to. Apart from this, will find it very difficult to make friends, as in what am I supposed to do, who am I supposed to talk to, and then you obviously can't fall back or call anyone back because look, I have no friends, because you still have no friends in that aspect also. Now, apart from this, I wanted to know how happiness is going to be far worse off on this house. So no matter how much utility, how much career, how much better world environment, running ability, or whatever you give to the person, that person simply can't, have the basic human need of like having a connection to another human person. That is then fulfilled, and that means that whatever utility, the absolutely very best case still falls back, because the person itself won't be happy. Now the fourth thing I'm going to talk to you about is the wish fulfillment, right? They talk to you about how the person can like fulfill their careers, for their dreams, they can become whatever they want, and all this. And we tell you why that won't happen. We told you how the world itself is changing, which means the skill requirement or the job requirements are also going to change, which is the person at the point where they go in the new culture, they have to adapt themselves to like whatever the job market. And we told you how that's not simply not possible. Simply just 100 years back, a 20-year-old simply isn't employable as a 20-year-old currently, because of the skill development, the skill difference that happens and all that stuff. You obviously don't know about how internet works or all that stuff. If you're like and the new technology come up, and you have no idea how to get a job in that field. That means that career or whatever is going to be very less fulfilled. The person simply won't have a job to fulfill whatever they want. You want to travel the world. Oh, sorry, you have no cash. Sit back at home, live a worse life, and that's a now, the final thing that we have to talk about is how the family is going to be worse off. We told you how the person does care about the family because they're close to them. And we also told you how the family will be worse off because you're literally leaving your family hanging, that says someday a slight chance that I might come, but they don't know it. Right? We told you how that's going to be very worse because the family simply can't move on. We told you so like imagine like your parents every single birthday waiting, maybe my son will become alive and come to me today and that I can celebrate him, but you're not coming there. Imagine that is the situation that the government is proposing for the family members. That is something that is so harmful. So as a person, you wouldn't want to make that decision, put your family through that. That isn't something that you believe principally justified to do. So based on those things, we did tell you how the wish will be, the main argument on their side definitely falls, and how the person is going to not find themselves adapted to the society and going to be suffer a lot. And based on all this, you believe that it's a choice that one should not make and live the rest of the life much more peacefully. And the rest of those things proud to oppose.
Thank you for that fine speech. Moving on to government reply. Whenever you're ready.
Yep. Before I begin, I just want to register my protest. I'm going to be using the phrase, so I hate the phrase epistemic access, only using it because it came up on op. All right. Starting speech in 3, 2, 1. 5 things I'm going to do for you in this speech. Firstly, different people value different things. The revelation that opposition has come to. I absolutely agree in that they like using the phrase epistemic access. I don't. DLO wouldn't plug themselves into the experience machine, but I would, which is why you cannot assume blanketly what this actor would like to do or not, which is why we give you structural reasons as to why these 6 months are probably going to be shit. What do we tell you? They're probably going to be physically incredibly weak, and if they don't want to undergo that pain, they're probably going to have to take opioids, which essentially spaces them out, take morphine. They probably can't be in their full senses and interact with their family to cherish those last 6 months, right? But also note that Nitin categorically tells you that within those 6 months, any experience that you truly enjoy will always be bittersweet, because hey, this is the last time I'm ever going to be able to experience this, and even this experience isn't to its fullest extent because I'm terminally ill at this point. Note that the choice, if it were to be given to terminally ill patients, i.e., would you be terminally ill for the remaining duration of your life or take the chance of not being terminally ill? We think statistically they have shown time and time again, by virtue of opting into clinical trials, placebo trials, essentially taking on like taking on like surgeries which are experimental to a large extent. People really want to live. The will to live is what gives us our survival instinct as individuals, as an entire race, and we think that's something that's incredibly evident based on so many stories that we see around us, right? Aaron Ralston literally chopped off his arm with a pocket knife because the thought of dying alone was so much worse than just being able to go out and live a life that was paralyzed, right? Sure, there would be harms that come with it, but this is an individual that wanted to take that choice regardless. I'm going to now prove to you in my remaining 4 points why that choice was a good one to make. Second thing, on adaptation, right? Note, they tell you that people don't really like to adjust, and adjustment is difficult. If opposition could have it their way, individuals from North Korea would never be saved from their country and taken to other nations where they get to experience democracies and cultures that they have never truly seen. Women from Iran could never go and live a happy life in France, right? Also note, if the world does in fact come to end because of climate change and we have to move to a separate planet, opposition would put its foot down and say, nope, it is genuinely too hard to adjust and we're not going to do it. We think that's objectively untrue, and that's simply not how human beings function, right? We think our reluctance to adjust is simply a product of conditioning or the comfort that we have in the status quo. Given that these 6 months are going to be so fucking terrible for this individual, we think they therefore inherently have an incentive to go ahead and want to adjust and adopt better because they already died in one life. This one they want to make the most of, right? Like something very simple to understand in terms of how adapting isn't really that hard is I think touchscreen phones was an absolutely new revelation to my generation of parents. My mother didn't want one under any circumstances. Now I have to fight to get her to actually talk to me as opposed to playing Candy Crush, right? We think individuals are inherently capable of change and adapting to circumstances. They never analyze to you outside of things will be different for why this is something that's so incredibly hard to do, right? Thirdly, on grief and fallback mechanism, we think yes, grief is real, but people can in fact go ahead and recover from grief. Sure, it will suck to come up and live in a world where you don't really know anybody, but we think that individuals go ahead and adapt to circumstances like that at all points in time. We think there are several people across the world who don't have support mechanisms, i.e. were born orphans, were probably put into a foster care system where they were abused, couldn't really make friends because they were always bullied and the social pariah. That doesn't mean these individuals stop living their fucking lives. They still go ahead and try, they still go ahead and push for better, and we think that's the chance that we're giving our actor on our side of the house. Fourthly, on why the world is likely to become better on our side of the house. They tell you nothing except climate change is a problem on their side of the house, right? We give you structural reasons as to why things are in fact likely to improve. We tell you that progressive change has been sweeping across the world in all parts, right, in all forms. Because of the advent of the internet, more international conversation about standards of living as well as human rights, we think the world is in fact improving and becoming a better place. Sure, you may not know how to use all the gadgets immediately, but surely you can learn how to use a new fucking device, right? Why is that something so outside the ambit of their imagination is something that they never truly go ahead and explain. Note that finally on the idea of family and why this is better, we think the family would still like to give you the chance of a better life. If they don't, they're incredibly selfish, and I don't see why you should suffer through the last 6 months of your life for these selfish, incredibly selfish individuals. Very proud to propose.
Thank you for that lovely speech. Now, with that, we have come to the end of the debate. I believe the speakers can stay here and the adjudicators can join me in the result discussion breakout room.
Just a sec, Shruti, I've already sent you my verdict here on Zoom itself.
Oh,
sorry,
yes.
Swati. Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Oh, that's cool. Thank you. So if the adjudicators are fine, they can send me the verdict here on private chat as well.
Hey, do we just have to send across the verdict or also the finals best speaker? Because that happens sometimes in tournaments, right?
Yeah, I've sent out both.
So do I send both as well? Like, do you need the finals best speaker from every panelist?